That is the best kombucha. Hi everyone, welcome to another video. For today, what I'm going to be doing is showing you how I make my vegan pizza. This pizza is a huge hit in my house and among my friends and family, and tons of people that I've made it for who are not vegan really love it. And I always have people asking me, oh my god Laura, can I come over and can you make that pizza? So I'm going to be showing you all how I do that. For this pizza, I make pretty much everything from scratch except the crust. I do use a mix for the crust, which I'll show you, but I make the pizza sauce homemade, and I also make like a vegan cheese to top it with. So the only thing with the vegan cheese, I've been using this recipe for, I want to say like maybe 3-4 years now, and I did get it online, so I don't want to say that this is my recipe, but I can't find the exact website that I got this particular recipe from. But if you Google like baked almond feta or baked almond cheese, you get a lot of hits. So this is not like a recipe that I made up. It was just one that I happened to use one time, so I wrote it out on my own little recipe card and I didn't put where I actually got it. So I'm sorry for that. I feel bad for that because I don't want to, I don't want to pretend like it's something that I made up when it's actually someone else's recipe. So whoever you are, thank you so much. This is an awesome recipe, and I hope you don't mind me sharing it with my friends and family and viewers here on my YouTube channel. So I've actually already started making the pizza sauce. It takes about 20 or 30 minutes to cook down and to thicken and to get nice and flavored enough to actually put on the pizza crust when it's ready to go in the oven. So I'm gonna show you that over on the stove top before I get started making the cheese. So I have my homemade from scratch pizza sauce simmering on the stove top right now. That takes about 20 to 30 minutes to cook down completely and thicken enough to use on the pizza crust so it's not too runny. So I started with that, and I'm gonna let that go while I prep the other stuff for the pizza. So to make that, what I did was I took these 2 jars of strained tomatoes. So I picked those up at the grocery store. They were only 99 cents per jar, which is super cheap. So making your own pasta sauce or pizza sauce is a lot cheaper and a lot healthier than purchasing those ready-made sort of ones. Those ones can have a lot of sodium in them and a lot of preservatives. So it's always a nice idea to make your own. And what I added to that was about 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I also added some parsley, some granulated or ground garlic, crushed red peppers because I like it a little bit spicy. I also put in some ground black pepper, and then I used this Italian seasoning here to season the sauce, maybe about a teaspoon or 2 of that. So I'm just gonna let that go on the stove top, and I will show you how I make the almond cheese. Okay, so while my sauce is simmering, I'm gonna start making the baked almond cheese for the pizza. So what I use for that to make it really easy is this mini KitchenAid food processor, or I think when you buy it, it says like KitchenAid chopper or something like that. But it's basically just a really basic setting food processor, and it helps to blend the ingredients really well. So to keep things nice and easy, I'm gonna be using that. So to start, what the recipe calls for is 1.5 cups of almond flour. So I am using the super fine almond flour by Bob's Red Mill. You can really easily do your own almond flour. If you buy the blanched almonds, like the ones with no skin, or if you just buy regular almonds, and I think if you soak them, the skins sort of peel off, you can definitely do that, and then put your almonds in a food processor and grind them up until they're nice and fine. You could probably even use a coffee grinder, that might work. But this was already done and it was nice and easy, so I'm using that for today. So 1.5 cups of almond flour I'm going to put into my little food processor. There's 1 cup. This thing's going to be really full actually. If you have a full-size food processor, you can totally do it that way. But this is, I actually want to make protein brownies later, so I need my like large full-size food processor for that, and I'm too lazy to wash it more than 1 time in a day, so I'm using my 2 separate ones. So that's 1.5 cups of almond flour. So there's my 1.5 cups of almond flour in the food processor. The next thing the recipe calls for is a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I only had half a lemon in my fridge, so I don't think that will be quite enough. But the great thing about cooking is it's not like baking. You can kind of eyeball your ingredients. Nothing has to be exact. So I'm just using my little hand juicer here to get my lemon juice out. That's probably only about a tablespoon. So I actually only got about 3 teaspoons, or like just over a tablespoon. So to make up for that, I'm gonna top it up with some extra apple cider vinegar. So if you're following this recipe, it is 1/4 cup of lemon juice, but if you don't have enough lemon juice like I do, you can probably get away with what I'm doing here. I'm gonna add another 1 or 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, and then I'll top up the rest of the 1/4 cup, which is about here. I'm just gonna top that up with some extra water. So I'm gonna throw that little mixture into my mini food processor. And the next ingredient the recipe calls for is 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I have my nice organic olive oil here, and I'm gonna use that same little cup and measure out 2 tablespoons. I was avoiding oil for a little while, like probably 1 or 2 years ago. So if you're somebody that's also avoiding olive oil, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I made this recipe without olive oil before and it turned out okay. Or you can reduce the amount of olive oil that you use, but you just get a little bit of a drier almond wheel. So I used the full amount, which was 2 tablespoons. And then it calls for a 1/4 cup of water. So I know we already added a little bit of water with the lemon juice mixture, but I'm gonna go back and add a full 1/4 cup of water. So there's a 1/4 cup of water. The next ingredient is a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So I just have my little cute salt box. I'm gonna add a 1/2 teaspoon. This is sea salt, so I'm just adding a level teaspoon of sea salt to my little food blender here. And then the last ingredient is 1 to 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, or to taste. So because I put a little bit of apple cider vinegar in that lemon juice mixture already, I'm just gonna do 1 teaspoon, and that'll make the almond cheese sort of nice and tangy. So there's not a teaspoon measure on my little glass here, so I'll use this one. So then just 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. So I'm sure you guys have seen this apple cider vinegar before. This is the Bragg Organic Raw Apple Cider Vinegar. This one contains the mother, which is that like kind of gross looking stringy thing, but that is where all of your sort of health benefits are contained for apple cider vinegar. You can buy the like refined ones by some of the more mainstream brands, but this one has all the nice health benefits that we want from our apple cider vinegar. So I really recommend you try that one out if you haven't already. So I have all my ingredients in the little mini food processor. So that's the beauty of this recipe. You literally just throw everything into your mini food processor. You could probably put it in a bowl and use a hand mixer to do it as well, but this makes it nice and easy. And then on mine, there's an option for chopping and then an option for pureeing. So I'm gonna puree it to mix it all together. And it's a good idea to stop periodically too, just to kind of scrape the sides down a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and use the puree option one more time to make it nice and smooth. So there's just what your almond cheese mixture should look like, and I'm gonna show you how to shape it into a wheel or sort of like a round shape for it to bake in the oven. Once you have your mixture all done, what I'm doing next is taking a sheet of plastic wrap. So it doesn't have to be huge. And then just lay that down on the counter in front of you. And then what we're gonna do is taking the food processor container off and my little spatula, I'm gonna scrape this mixture right onto the plastic wrap. And you wanna try to keep it in like a little round pile sort of on the plastic wrap. So just try to place it down right in the middle and keep it in a neat little round pile. You don't want to actually like spread it onto the plastic, because this is what you're going to use to shape this into a nice little round shape to make a little cheese wheel, vegan cheese wheel. Okay, so once you have your little pile of mixture in the middle of the plastic, you just want to pick up the corners of the plastic wrap. So kind of pick up all four corners and make sure your mixture is staying in the center. And then just use your plastic wrap to shape that into a nice round shape. It doesn't really have to be perfect, it's just to kind of keep everything neatly together for it to bake in the oven. So I just have my little tray lined with my parchment paper, and then I'm gonna grab my little plastic wrapped cheese wheel thing, and I'm gonna transfer that onto my baking sheet. So I'm just kind of flipping that over onto the parchment paper and taking away the plastic wrap. Then you should have something that looks kind of like that to go into the oven. So I preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and I'm going to put that in the oven. And on the recipe card I have here, it says bake for 15 to 25 minutes, turning the wheel halfway through baking time until either side is lightly golden and crusty. So I'm going to put this in the oven, and I'm going to time it for about 12 minutes, at which point I'll flip it over and it should be nice and brown on the bottom, which I'll show you. So I just started talking to my camera when it was not recording. So I started making the pizza crust mix already, which I can show you in just a second here. I'll catch you up on what I did off camera. But anyway, my almond feta is about halfway done in the oven. It still has another 10 or 12 minutes to go. So that's finishing baking the oven. The pizza sauce is still thickening a little bit on the stovetop as well, but that's getting to be almost done. So the next step, what I'm doing is making my pizza crust. So for that, what I use is this Bob's Red Mill gluten-free pizza crust mix. I don't personally follow a gluten-free diet. I just happen to really like this pizza crust. It always turns out really well. I have to give credit to a friend of mine who actually introduced this to me quite a few years ago now. She made an awesome vegan pizza, and this is what she used for her pizza crust mix. So I've stuck with that over the past several years since she introduced me to it, because I really love it. So that's the mix that I like to use. I'll just read to you on the back of the package what you're gonna need to make your pizza crust. So it says 1.5 cups warm water, 1 packet of yeast, 2 large eggs. So if you are completely vegan, there is a vegan option for that, which is going to be a combination of water and flaxseed meal, which I'll show you in just a second. You also need 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then of course 1 package of Bob's Red Mill gluten-free pizza crust mix. So what you get in this little pizza crust mix is a packet of this gourmet perfect rise yeast. So this comes with it. So when I thought I was recording, when I wasn't, I started the yeast portion of the pizza crust. So basically what you do is just open this little package, dump it out into a bowl, and then I added 1.5 cups of warm water, which is all that's in the bowl right at the moment. So I have my yeast in there, I have a little bit of warm water. From there, what you want to add is the eggs and the oil. So starting with the oil, because it's right in front of me, it calls for 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So I have my little measuring spoons here. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil to my water and yeast mixture. And then of course for me, I'm going to be doing the vegan option. So instead of using eggs, I'm going to be using flaxseed meal and water. I have the Bob's Red Mill whole ground flaxseed meal, which I'm going to be using. So these are already ground. If you have whole flax seeds, or if you just want to buy whole flax seeds, you can also grind those yourself. A coffee grinder works really well for that. So the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons. So I'm just using a little measuring cup to make that mixture. I have 1 tablespoon in there already, so I'm just gonna add my 2nd tablespoon. And then it says to add 6 tablespoons of water. So I'm just gonna go over to the sink and get some water in here. It isn't even big enough to hold 6 tablespoons of water, so I have to get a bigger dish. So make sure you have a dish big enough to actually hold the flaxseed and the water. So this is going to be our egg replacement, the flaxseed and the water. So I'm just going to let that sit for just a moment. And so I'm going to dump in the whole bag of pizza crust mix into the yeast, water, and oil mixture. And then once you've let your flax egg mixture sit for about 4 or 5 minutes, you can go ahead and dump that into the bowl as well. Then just using a wooden spoon, I'm gonna mix that all together. So this pizza crust mixture gets really thick. You might want to use your hands for this part. So you can see that this mix is really, really dry and like almost crumbly. It's not like your typical really stretchy, flexible pizza dough. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and do the rest of this by hand, just take my rings off. And just kind of use your hands to pull the dough apart and mix it together. I know my oven's beeping at me because my almond cheese is about to come out of the oven. Once you have your dough all blended together and mixed by hand, you're gonna take the whole thing and separate it into 2 little balls. So I'm just gonna shape those into a round sort of spherical shape because that'll make it nice and easy to press out onto your pan. My oven's gonna start beeping at me any minute because that almond feta is about done. See? All right, so I gotta get that out of the oven. I'm just gonna quickly wash my hands. There's the almond cheese. It just came out of the oven. It smells so good and it's this nice golden brown color. So you can see that it has this nice sort of crispy outer layer, but it's nice and soft and fluffy inside, which is what you'll see when I start to assemble the pizza. And then my pizza sauce is also all done on the stovetop here. So there's a little bit of olive oil settling on the surface. So I'm gonna stir that up and then I'll put it on the pizza crust when it comes out of the oven. So once your pizza dough is ready, you wanna preheat your oven to 425 degrees. And we're actually gonna bake this pizza crust first before we put all the toppings and everything on. I lined a square cookie sheet with a piece of parchment paper. You can use the round pizza pans. They work really well also, but I'm using a rectangular one today, and I'm just taking one of my pizza dough balls here and placing it right in the middle of the pan. And then you can use a rolling pin for this part if you want, but this dough tends to be really, really sticky, so it's actually a little easier if you press it out onto the pan just using your hands. There's my pizza crust all rolled out onto my baking pan. So it can be a little frustrating working with this pizza crust mix because it's really, really sticky. So one of the things that you can do is just keep your hands slightly damp and then rinse them off every so often, and that makes it really, really easy to smooth out the pizza crust. Or you can use a rolling pin with a little bit of flour, but I personally find it a little bit easier to use my hands. Once again, after you get your pizza crust spread out onto your pan, you want to bake it in the oven before you actually put any toppings on it. So I did that just until it was a little bit brown. You can kind of see that. And a little bit sort of crispy, and then it will finish cooking with the rest of the toppings on it. So that's what I'm going to do now. So for veggie toppings, what I have is some mushrooms, some red onions, some red pepper, and jalapenos. I have my almond cheese kind of sliced up and ready to go, and then I have my pot of tomato sauce, and then I have a little bit of baby spinach as well. So I have a ton of toppings on this pizza, so I'm gonna put it back in the oven. The pizza crust is pretty much cooked. Usually just watch the pizza in the oven. I'll put it in for maybe about 10 or 15 minutes, just until the onions start to caramelize a little bit, and you can see the mushrooms and the peppers start to cook as well. So I'm gonna throw that in the oven and I'll keep an eye on it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out. So I just took the pizza out of the oven, and there's the final product. It smells so good. So I'm gonna cut this up and I'm gonna sit down and have a couple slices for dinner. And I just wanna say thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.